The greatest healer in my life, in everybody's life, lives within. Doctors can set a bone and stitch up a wound, but they can't tell the body how to heal. That healing power lives within me. And my orientation, just because of like where I was oriented to look to the external for my solutions. And actually part of my own work is like, wait a minute, I'm part of the all that is. I'm going to heal in the all that is, not just science, all that really pointing me back to here. But it took a freaking healing crisis for me to get that. So I would have liked to have known that the greatest healer in your life lives within you, and pain is part of healing. I learned that the hard way too. Nobody ever told me that. They try and do everything they can to make it go away. They never just said, this is the process, babe. They never said that. They did everything they could to make it go away.
Welcome back to Shine In and Out, the space where science meets soul. I'm your host, Sammy Stoltz, a biologist and researcher exploring how science, psychology, meaning, consciousness all shape the way that we experience our lives and how we can use our perception to influence our biology to lead happier and healthier lives. So, wherever you are, take a breath with me. Arrive here and let's jump in. We've got Elizabeth Kipp today. Elizabeth is a stress management and historical trauma specialist, a certified addiction recovery coach, and the author of The Way Through Chronic Pain. Something a lot of us know a lot about. Her work bridges neuroscience, somatic awareness, and spiritual healing, helping people understand and release chronic stress patterns, anxiety, addiction, and inherited emotional patterns. What makes her work especially powerful is that it is lived. After more than 40 years of chronic pain, anxiety, and addiction, Elizabeth found her way through and is here to help others do the same. So let's jump right in. All right, Elizabeth, welcome to Shine In and Out.
Well, hi, Samantha. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me in.
Thank you. We've already gotten into a fun conversation, but I'd love for the audience to hear your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Sure. So I was born into a family which was we looked great on the outside, but we were pretty dysfunctional on the inside. And anyway, so that kind of created a kind of a pattern in my nervous system, because my brother and I learned to walk on, it was like walking on eggshells. Our mother was bipolar, undiagnosed, untreated bipolar, and she kind of treated herself, she treated herself with alcohol, which like didn't agree with her. So a lot of erratic behavior and very unpredictable. So that's hard on a nervous system, a growing nervous system. It's hard on anybody, but it's especially hard on a growing nervous system, right? So I had this pattern of stress and chronic stress, and we're going to talk a little bit about chronic pain. So let me just define chronic pain right on the outset for everyone, because they get confused about what it is. Chronic pain is any pain that's felt 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial. Grief is a chronic pain experience if that's experienced 15 days out of 30 for 3 months or more. The brain can't tell the difference between one kind of pain and another. It all sends the same signal: it hurts. So a broken bone and a broken heart, same signal. So I was in a chronic stress situation. And kind of compounded when I was 14. I had an accident, fell off a horse, broke the 5th lumbar in my spine. Because I had this old pattern of chronic stress and chronic pain, I was able to get up and walk away from that accident. And we never even had an x-ray till 7 years later, because I was so used to pain. I was so used to pain that I was like, oh, that hurt. but I was able to walk, and I had seen people crash on horses before and be taken off on litters, and they couldn't get up, and I was like, I could get up, so I thought I was fine, right? So, but 7 years later, I was really having difficulty with my back hurting like a lot all the time, like kind of magnified. And I went to a doctor, and I went to a bunch of different doctors, and I had an X-ray. The first chiropractor, I had an X-ray, and he said, "Oh, you have an old accident." Like, and I said, "Oh, I know when that happened," right? And that bone had slipped, had broken into front to back, and the front part was slipped forward and pulling my leg nerves with it. So that was causing pain. So I didn't want surgery. I was scared of surgery at the time, and because people wanted to do fusion, other doctors wanted to do a fusion, but the chiropractor said, I think we can manage this. So they managed it for 7 years. So that's 14 years after the accident. After 7 years with chiropractors, he said to me one day, some of our patients need surgery, and you're one of them, right? So that slip had begun to migrate, and where it started at a 25% slip, and it ended up being about a 75% slip, and they were worried that it was going to, like I was going to be, like it was going to slip all the way, and that I would be unable to walk. So I had surgery, and it took 3 surgeries to do the kind of the stuff that we needed to. I now have a bunch of hardware in my back holding that area together from L4, the 4th lumbar, down to the sacrum, the first sacral. And then we had to do another surgery on that to manage a rather large incisional hernia that developed because of the surgery they did. So
goodness.
That was kind of that. But what happened there just before I had that first surgery, was I was in so much pain, and I was so reactive to the pain that they gave me opiates and benzodiazepines. And benzodiazepine is an anti-anxiety medicine. So that was a journey that I started on, and it just continued, and it kind of like an avalanche, really, for 31 years. Because that was their answer. Their answer is, here are your opiates and benzos. This is the best life you've got. And I was like, here was the thing. I had a science background, and by the second surgery, when they said, you have chronic pain, you can't heal from that, I was devastated, right? Because I was used to looking at the experts as they know what they're talking about. But I had the science background, and I knew about models. It's a scientific model, and I knew kind of about science, and I was like, wait a minute, he's not a fortune teller. He said you can't heal from this. That's not science. Science is about probabilities, not facts. So he made an error, and scientific paradigms shift. And he's operating a scientific paradigm, right? So he made another error. And the other thing was like, wait a minute. Science can only talk about what it can observe, measure, and describe. It can't talk about anything outside of that. But we live in all that is, and we heal in the
experience.
We heal in the all that is, not just in the part that science can observe, measure, and describe. So science has a contribution to make, but it's a limited contribution. And so he was telling me more about the limitation of the model he was working with than he was telling me about the body's ability to heal. And those 4 things that I just brought in, that's what kept me going until I could actually find someone who actually knew what chronic pain was and help me clear it. Yeah. Help me heal from it. Yeah. And I did. I went into a pain management program, and he got me off the opiates and benzos. And the last 15 years of those opiates, by the way, was fentanyl. So, 15 years. oh my God, right? So the fact that I'm alive just kind of blows me away. A lot of people didn't make it. A lot of patients just that's a very strong medicine, and they would just fall asleep and they'd stop breathing.
That's what happened to my dad.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that.
I'll explain the parallels in a moment.
Yeah,
I want to
yeah,
hear about your
yeah.
unlocking moment. It's such a parable that people with chronic pain go from doctor to doctor to doctor not getting help. So I'm so glad you kept trying and found the right
Yeah,
person. So what did they
yeah.
teach you?
Well, it was so interesting because his name was Dr. Peter Prescott, and he was board certified in about 8 different medical medical practices, which was like, what? So psychiatry, addiction, neurophysiology, he's a headache specialist. It just kind of a long list. And when I met Peter, he was like, he knew the medicines I was on, and he knew that I had this chronic pain thing. And he said to me, I can help you reset your stress response. And I was like, dude, I'm in. Because he also said, I can help you get off the medicine. So my prescribing doctor didn't have, his solution was put me in a coma, and he hadn't ever done that before. I was like, I'm not going to be your guinea pig. So I didn't have, my own prescribing doctor really didn't have an exit plan. So I say to people now, before you get on a medicine, find out what the exit plan is first. Right. But anyway,
good
so
tip.
So Dr. Peter says, we call him Peter. He says, I can reset your stress response. I can get you off the medicine. And he knew I was having panic attacks. That was the thing that really brought me down. I knew the pain medicine was just messing with my body, but I didn't understand that the benzos were causing the panic attacks. I couldn't, Samantha, I couldn't find a pattern. There was no pattern to the panic attacks, right? We're trained to look for patterns. There's no pattern. Yeah. What the hell is this? Right? So it was the benzos, but they didn't have that. My prescribing doctor didn't know about it. It wasn't in the literature that comes with a medicine. You couldn't find that information anywhere, but Peter knew about it. And so I was like, dude, I'm in. So I detoxed. It took me about 12 days to detox. And then I went into his classroom, which at the time had about 20 other people, pretty much just like me, who were detoxing from some mixture of pain medicine and long-term chronic pain. And we worked a holistic program, which included breathwork, right, meditation, qigong. We had ancestral clearing. That's where I picked up. That's the first time I was exposed to ancestral clearing, which blew me away. And we did a little adversity therapy, which is kind of like trauma work. But here's the thing, Samantha, the first question he asked me when I got in that classroom, it wasn't just me, the whole class. The first thing comes out of his mouth was, what are you doing to contribute to your pain? And I was like, what am I didn't say it out loud, but I said it in my head. What am I doing to contribute to my pain? It's doing it to me. I'm just in complete victim mode. And I was like, dude, I can't even believe you just asked that question in this room of all places. What's your problem? But here was the thing. I understood in the middle of that question, what are you doing to contribute to your pain? That he was suggesting that I had a role in my own pain experience. And I was like, that never even crossed my mind. It never even occurred to me that I might have a role in that. So he had my attention at that first question. Right?
Wow.
And then the second thing he said was, don't judge the moment. And I'm like, I'm sitting here minding my own business, not judging anything. I mean, I didn't say it out loud, but you can see the attitude, right? I was just like, don't mess with me, right? And I realized he was talking about my pain, that I had been judging my pain as bad my whole life.
Yes.
Right? And so here's the thing, guys. Pain is information.
Thank you.
It's not good or bad. It just is what it is. I have a friend and teacher of mine, Guru Prem Singh Khalsa, who says this is so brilliant. Pain is the currency of transformation. Be careful how you spend it.
Wow. I
Yeah,
love that.
right.
I love that. There
So
truly
this was
is.
a
I talk about it a lot with the language that we use and how powerful it is to our
yeah.
mind. If you just didn't label things, first of all, a lot of what you discussed is what I hope to study with my research and my PhD. First of all, the chronic stress. I think it definitely contributes to chronic pain, dyshomeostasis of the whole system. Then I have personal relations because I probably around 15, 17 started having my own chronic pain, chronic fatigue because of that chronic stress. Very similar, unstable, dysfunctional home environment, despite seeming like everything was fine. And truthfully, I was used to the pain. I just let it go. I didn't seek help until I could not stay awake to save my life. I couldn't drive for 5 minutes. I couldn't do anything. I would have they gave me, of course, amphetamines. So I was taking those, drinking caffeine, eating spicy foods, and still falling asleep sitting up. And I was like, all right, I guess I should get help because I'm not functioning. The pain I didn't listen to. I didn't listen to my body. And so back to what you were saying, pain is information. And my whole hypothesis is that if we can help people shift from pain as punishment to pain as benevolent communication from your body, who is your teammate in this life, it just might change everything. Same as seeing the stress as a good thing instead of as detrimental. Stress is enhancing hypothesis, all of those things. So I'm very excited. Dr. Peter sounds brilliant. Tell me more.
Yeah, he was amazing. Yeah, he passed away in 2016, but oh my, he left a book called Conquer Chronic Pain, an innovative mind-body approach, which you can get on Amazon. It's an amazing book. He's got exercises in the back, which I've done. They're very powerful. And it's a doctor's view on chronic pain. I wrote a kind of a companion to that called The Way Through Chronic Pain, Tools to Reclaim Your Healing Power, which is the patient to kind of explain to people, to doctors, nurses, the family members, anybody with chronic pain, this is what it's like to be a chronic pain patient. This is what it's like.
People really don't get it.
And so and these are the tools I use to, and it's not just so much about my story, really. I told you more about my story here than I did in the book, but it does talk about the tools that I use to unwind that stress habit and the chronic pain, the chronic stress habit in the nervous system. So Peter was remarkable. He understood. Now he had Western and Eastern influence because he started as a 6-year. He's my age. He started as a 6-year-old learning Kung Fu. So he had this Eastern training. So he understood that the Western reductionist model is incomplete and that you have to look at the whole body, which was why when I first met him, he said, I don't need to see your records or your x-rays. I want to know who you are, which stopped me in my tracks because I was like, who are you and where have you been all my life?
I know.
I never heard a doctor ask me that kind of question. I was like,
which I think is the future. I think personalized medicine is not just on a genetic basis, on a pharmaceutical basis. I think it is the doctor should know you and you should feel truly seen and heard to feel safe in that relationship. And it matters how they talk to you and how much time they spend with you. And of course, the industry and insurance and all of those things have taken us away from that. But when you find that one doctor, and frankly, I'm still looking, it is such a relief, and it makes your body feel safe enough to actually start healing because you trust. So, wow. And your book, by the way, I'm so excited to read it. And I think the way that you describe it, it also would be incredibly helpful for family members of people who suffer with chronic pain, friends of people who suffer with chronic pain, because my dad, he started having chronic pain at like 13 years old, and
Oh,
nobody believed him. None of the
oh,
tests showed anything, and
yeah. What happened?
over and over and over, there was nothing they could do about it. He got on opioids. He was on them for 30 years, and with the epidemic, they weren't giving him his medicine. So he was like, F this, I can't like be beholden to a pharmacy and I'm going insane. So
Oh.
he detoxed. We had a live-in nurse for like a month because it is so dangerous to withdraw.
Uh, I know. I did it.
Yeah. Then he succumbed to alcoholism as his self-medication, and that's how things unraveled. But if things had been done differently, if he had the right care team, he had become so cynical because he had been to so many different people who told him the same thing, either that it
Yep.
was in his head, which partially it is,
Oh
it's
my.
a mind-body thing.
Yeah.
but that's not a phrase to discount, and they treated it like it was a discount of there's nothing actually wrong with you, like it's in your head. So what do you have to say
Yeah.
about it's in your head?
Oh my God. Doctors used to say that to me. I was so grateful I had a science background. I looked them straight in the eye and said, "You're damn right it's in my head. It's in my brain. My brain is in my head." Oh my God. I mean, it's just like I couldn't. So part of man, that was so much, Samantha. I'm so sorry to hear all that.
That's why I'm
That's
trying
so
to help people
it's,
now, you know?
it's a real train wreck. Yeah. And the reason that
Yeah.
I will tell you something else. When I went to treatment to Peter's program, which was a treatment center, right, to get me detoxed off the medication, which was an amazing, like, oh my God. And then went into the classroom and started doing that kind of work. There were 20 of us. There were 100 patients on campus, and there were 80 that were coming off of alcohol, and there were 20 of us that were chronic pain people in pain track. We called it pain track. And everybody, all the 80 went in the afternoon. They went to relapse school, but we went to pain track, so we didn't get any relapse training. And everybody's like, "Oh, relapse!" And so I went to my counselor and I said, "By the way, that's one of the things I really study is what causes a relapse. That's one of the things in my recovery."
Interesting.
But I went to my counselor and I said, "Well, I'm not getting any training in relapse. What about that?" And she says to me, "There's an 80% relapse rate in the first year." And I'm like, "You'll appreciate this." And I went, "I'm doomed," because I didn't like the odds. And the second thing I said to myself was, what's wrong with this model that we've only got a 20% death rate? We got to shift the model. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I was like, if I survive this, because it was very intense, that 52 days I was there.
It took so much bravery to detox. Like, you have to trust your doctor to detox. Like, that
Well,
is...
I had a very powerful, yes, I had to trust my doctor, but it went beyond that. I trusted in the divine. I was like, I'm either held or I'm not, and whatever happens, I'm stepping in, and I knew my weak point in that whole operation was the door, because I knew I could walk out anytime. Right?
Yeah.
But I swore in that moment that my counselor said that. I said, when I get out of here and get my sea legs in my recovery, I'm going to do everything I can to try and move that needle on the relapse rate.
Yeah.
And so and because my area really is chronic pain and stress management, that's why I do what I do. Now, ancestral clearing is a piece of that, but the recovery and relapse and stress management and all the neurophysiology and what the hell's going on in the nervous system and how do we rewire the stress habit that started all of it in the first place. That's the bread and butter of my life these days.
Wow. So this came kind of full circle. For context to whoever is listening, before we started recording, Elizabeth was telling me that she studied ecology. And everything that you're saying about this detox facility is environment-based. It's an ecosystem. And how well is the ecosystem working? How well are you working with the ecosystem? So It's crazy how full circle beautiful that is if you allow it to be. But what about the environment did you feel at the time needed to change, but also as you learned more about trying to, like you said, move the needle away from that 80%,
Uh-huh.
what came to you as we need to do this differently?
Yeah. So you said something, great question. You said something earlier that you really just you hit the soft part of this whole discussion, which is safety. You talked about safety, right? So I felt safe with Peter because he saw who I was and he accepted me where I was. He wasn't trying to, now he would say, I love this so much. He would say to me, and he wasn't just me. He said it to all of us at different times. I just, he passed away, but his voice is still in my head. Get out of your head, he would say, right? Because the mind
Mm,
spin out, right? Because he wanted us to get back. We're all dissociated because we're in chronic pain. We don't want to be in our bodies. And so
yeah.
part of the work was like, Peter was a safe space. And he taught us that we could be safe in our bodies. And so we have to do this deal from the inside out with someone who knows the way. So there's safety within, but there's co-regulation between one person and another. This is all basic neurophysiology. This is polyvagal 101.
Well, you
Right?
said it. This is shine in and out. You have to do the work on the inside and on the outside. I completely agree. And the fact of the matter is we all live in a world full of distractions. We do anything but exist with our thoughts and our bodies. And the amount of people that don't even take the time to observe what's going on inside them, or as soon as they have pain, they do anything to distract themselves from it. When the real, oh, me too.
I used to do that.
And now I'm understanding that embodiment and observing the pain and telling yourself that you're safe is the real cure, but it's like it's intuitive once you know it, but before then it's just scary. So
Yeah. Well,
what would you say to
yeah.
somebody who's just hearing this for the first time and being like, why would I want to sit with my pain?
Okay. Well, remember we started this conversation with walking on eggshells,
Yeah.
and that there was this pattern in the nervous system. I'm not safe. And this is the nervous system's like, oh, this is how we do life. Because the brain loves repetition. Now that's a foundational piece of understanding this system, repetition. So we're repeating, oh, I'm walking on eggshells again today. I'm walking on eggshells again today. And this becomes a comfort zone.
Even
And
even before you're aware, like
oh
when I
yeah,
was
we're not
young.
like we're just running on fumes, man. We're not.
Yeah.
we're just we're just trying to survive. So this becomes a pattern in the nervous system, and part of that pattern is this thing called hypervigilance, which is like I'm not safe.
Yeah.
I'm not safe, and so we kind of go from this, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, which the nervous system can't handle for too long, to this shutdown. Now I'm exhausted. We
Mm-hmm.
can't stay there too long. And so we get in this, we flip from one to the other. We're trying to find safety, but we can't. And this is called the trauma feedback loop. And so we want to do whatever we can to get off the trauma feedback loop. And what is that? That's fundamentally, you're asking me that question. It begins with actual safety. You can't think your way out of this. You have to nervous system your way out of it because it's set in the whole system is set in the nervous system. And how we do that, because we've got automated, we're autonomic nervous system that's just doing what it does. We have one thing we can access, which is the breath. That's our entry point. So we can learn to leverage the power of the breath and begin to rewire that pattern from, oh my God, or I'm exhausted, shut down, to I'm steady. And I'm
It's
still working
it's
on that 12 years later. I'm 12
of
years into my
course.
recovery. Still, every day I sat down for 11 minutes and did a breath pattern again to remind my nervous system, hey, this is how we're doing life today. Right?
That's
Every day.
actually I was working on my thesis proposal today, and breathwork is a huge part of the nervous system healing and the rebounding from that chronic stress, that chronic central sensitization.
Yeah.
So breath, it's so funny because we all do it. We all know how to do it,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's in the background of our lives. And we're at the point where like, I think breath work should be taught to kindergartners, like start them
100%.
early. Because,
100%.
I mean, it seems so silly, but your body, you can convince your body that you're safe if you're breathing as if you were safe.
That's right. Exactly.
And of
That's our
course,
entry point
yeah, and
into
of
that,
course,
into that. We can't think our way out of it. We have to breathe our way out. We have to begin to do practices that that tell the nervous system that it's safe after all, and that's what the long exhale does.
exactly. You can't do it all in your mind and you can't do it all in your body. So you go to a psychiatrist, great. You go to a doctor, great. But you need to do it all in order for it to stick. And I definitely learned that myself. And even like while you were talking about like your brain getting used to being hypervigilant and looking out for you, which it's a defense mechanism. Evolutionarily, it makes total sense. We're just not meant to be in constant fight or flight because that
Right.
causes breakdown because you're not actively
Well,
healing. But truly, if that's what you're looking for, areas where you're not safe, that's what you're going to see. So, so I'd love to hear about your journey after you finish with your doctor and now you're on your own.
oh yeah, yeah. So that was I love that.
That's scary.
This is the real work. So
Yeah.
so so I walked into that program with 40 years of chronic pain, and I walked out 52 days later with no pain no pain at all. I had no physical pain. Which was like he never promised that. It was, but he had a 94% success rate in that program. So I'm like, oh my God. So that tells you that that holistic model works, including, by the way, the ancestral clearing part. And I got out. Remember I said I wanted to get my sea legs in my recovery? Well, I was like, okay, I'm off my meds. And I didn't have any cravings for them, which was incredible. And also, by the way, I quit smoking when I went into treatment. So I quit opiates, benzos,
Nice.
and cigarettes, which was like amazing. But anyway, so that kind of typical addict behavior. I'm going to do it all. Right.
Been there.
Right. So, but anyway, I got out and I realized I still had the stress pattern that was underlying the chronic pain.
Well, of course, you're in the real world now. Like when you're in a facility or on a vacation, it's a lot easier to be in that healthy nervous system state. But your
Well,
body remembers the patterns.
I didn't have enough. I was still in the stress pattern when I was in treatment. I just didn't. I just hadn't. I just had to clear the effects of all the medication, which took about 52 days to clear all that. And then I had to see where I was. And it was like, oh, you still have the stress habit. So, and Peter said when I left, he said, use the tools every day for the rest of your life. And I was like, thank you. That was the directive. I was grateful. I didn't even know they were tools, Samantha, before I even went in there. I was like, there's tools? I've been getting by on my wits all this time, like wits and drugs. Like that's not, you need all these tools. I'm like, wow. So I went into, so I was doing Peter's work, which is all this nervous system work. I went into a yoga program. I started with a daily yoga practice, very specific. With Recovery 2.0, Tommy Rosen and Recovery 2.0. And I started going to recovery meetings here in Narcotics Anonymous. I do meetings on Recovery 2.0 now. so that kind of understanding what is this recovery thing all about, and who are the, and was with a group, because it's really important to heal. Remember, we're traumatized in unsafe relationships, so we heal in safe relationships. And when we get together in groups and we work on this stuff together, we heal each other. So I did all that, and I did some journaling, and I kind of turned out that I was like, I actually had an ability to write, which I, creatively write, which I was shocked. But that was part of
That's,
that was part of unwinding my habit, was like revealing all these things that had been blocked
yeah,
before.
because you can't be in a beautiful creative state while you're trying to fend for your life. So once you adapted your body to more homeostatic normalcy, it's like, oh, I can be creative now. I feel safe. So
That's right.
that's beautiful that you recognize that as well. And I had some experience with Al-Anon, which is
Mhm.
for the family members of alcoholics. And
Mhm.
that was a beautiful experience. So I completely understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Communal healing. We are communal beings.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And really kind of understanding, I really feel like the stuff that we learn in recovery programs, I'm like, why didn't I learn this? Why isn't this in school? Like, this is fundamental
Mhm.
strategy for living life. This is how we live life. This is how to do it, right? So I just, I don't have enough good things to say about the 12-step programs, and the 12 steps as a strategy for kind of working life. It's not the only strategy, but it's a good one, and the support system is unparalleled. Yeah.
Yeah. People who
Yeah.
truly understand.
Yeah.
That's really key. Because even your friends and family, they can support you, but it doesn't mean that they understand. So to be
Yeah.
understood, like you
Mhm.
said, Dr. Peter understood you and you felt seen, and that was the beginning of your body allowing you to feel safe. And
That's right.
I truly believe that understanding breeds love. Like you can't have love without understanding. And I love that you were saying when you got out, you didn't even crave the drugs anymore. And it's probably because your body wasn't seeking a distraction or, you know, something to offload onto because you had the tools to process things. It's not that it was easy, but it's that you had the tools and you were willing to continue using them.
Yeah. I had a lot of support. It was so interesting in that treatment center, because I was laid up for 12 days, but I was there for 52. So I was there for 40 days, moving around, building to building and meeting people and stuff. I didn't know anybody there except Peter, and and I only saw him a few times, like every day for a few hours during the week. But it was so interesting because every time I had a problem, I go, oh my God, this thing, whatever, because I was just, you can imagine how stressful that was. I mean, I shook for
Oh,
30 days. Like, I was just like it was just like,
I
I would
can't
go
even
see
imagine.
every morning. I would go to check in with the nurses. I would see how much, where my shaking was compared to the day before. Right. It was like, anyway, the detox was intense, and I ran into a lot of my own insecurities there,
Mm.
and self-esteem issues. And every time I was like, I don't know what to do now, somebody was there to help me. It was extraordinary. At every turn, somebody, and it's a complete stranger, was there to help
Yeah.
me. How do you explain that? I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's a that's evidence to me, the scientist, right, as a human being, of a power greater than any of us have any really clue about. The mind, my mind can't track that. It's too big.
Not that I don't try the universal consciousness, the physics of it, the
Right.
like it's incredible and I spend my days enjoying pondering these things. One thing that you mentioned was self-esteem and the fact that while you were there, one of the hardest things was knowing that you had the free will to leave. And probably until you made that final decision to stay, that wavering place is, at least for me, more difficult, the going back and forth. And you also
Yeah.
mentioned self-sabotage. So, so could you go, kind of tie the bow with those things, as well as with the ancestral
Uh-huh.
evolutionary bit of everything?
Sure, the self-sabotage. So interesting you mentioned the door, because I'm going into that whole program. I was like, what's the weak point here? Before I went in, I was like, I needed to know. And I was like, oh, the door. Right. So,
Yeah.
but what was interesting was the door became a choice every day.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I'm going to sit here for another couple of breaths and then I'll make a decision. Right. It's just like,
Yeah.
so it was just one day at a time, one moment at a time, 1 hour, whatever I needed to chunk it down as. I did this thing, one kind of thing at a time, one step at a time. And that was the saving grace for me. The self-sabotage was the self-esteem part of me, the insecure part of me, the inner critic, which, oh my God, she was running rampant. Which
She can be loud.
I do a whole. I got out of that program, and one of the things I did was I took my inner mean girl to inner mean girl reform school and gave her a makeover, and I actually teach how to do that. Like, I have a process.
I love that.
But that inner critic of mine was running rampant. You can imagine, because it's still chronic pain. Part of chronic pain is this negative mind. It's like, I can't remember what I just did, and my emotions are like, rah, and they're very intense, and also this negativity. So I was still under the influence of that. It's also part of a stress habit. So self-sabotage is, well, nobody wants to listen to me, I'm not even going to say anything. Well, how am I going to get my needs met if I can't talk? Right? I'm like, that's kind of an example. Or nobody wants to listen to me, or I'm not worth it. Oh my God, when I got out of treatment and I started on my own kind of daily practice thing, I noticed how hard it was for me to get up every morning and get to the mat to do my yoga practice. And I was like, what is the problem? It's good for you. You feel better when you finish doing it. What's the issue? And I was like, what is it? And I heard this voice inside of me go, you're not worth the trouble. That's self-sabotage. And I was like, aha, I see that. I don't trust myself. I don't feel like well, how am I going to work with that? Well, I'm going to work with that by showing up to the mat every day and proving to myself, A, that I'm worth it, and B, that I can trust myself to heal, that I can trust myself to continue doing the work. So yeah, it takes massive amounts of courage. And I had
trust.
Yeah.
You are so right. We'll do anything. We'll do anything for everyone else. But
yeah, I know.
And we care that everyone trusts us, and we'll always keep our word. But when it comes to ourselves, it's like, oh, it's just me.
I
we
know.
gotta fix that.
Yeah. So the other piece of that I want to bring in was I had a saving grace when I was a kid. I had a couple of things that I came in with. I swear my ancestors just like, man, she's going to need this. So here it is. One of them was gratitude. So no matter how dicey things got at home, I didn't think up. It was right there for me, Samantha. I was like, okay, but I still have a roof over my head, and I have food in my belly, and I've got a bed to sleep in. And I was like, I found things to be grateful for despite the madness. The other thing is that I had this persistence. I'm like a dog with a bone. I mean, and that has served me in my recovery. That has served me. So that thing about stepping into
persistence,
that persistence, and like, I'm going to do this anyway, in spite of like all the, I'm not worthy, and nobody wants to hear what you have to say, and all things. I had this persistence, and fortunately, it was stronger than the other. It was stronger than the self-sabotaging stuff. So, that again, I feel like is grace in action. Like, right.
I like that. I like that. I mean, me doing all of this, like, I used to be so afraid of just speaking in front of another human, let alone posting a podcast for anyone to listen to with like my full authentic self. It's absurd, but my love and my desire to help others is so much bigger than my fear that I keep showing up. And I think a great theme to follow is showing up for yourself. Treat yourself like your own best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Be your own teammate, whatever it takes. Whether it's the mean girl in your head and you're trying to befriend her. And so I'd love to hear about that. How did you, like, give me an example of your
Oh my God.
inner dialogue shift there.
Yeah. So I was like, first of all, I remember asking Peter in a group, how is it? So my mother was very scary, right? I talked about her. How is it that the scariest person in my life as a kid ended up as a voice in my head? How does that even work? Like, I'm like, and I thought it was just me. Everybody in the room's nodding. And I'm like, oh, this is actually a thing. And Peter said, we're wired to attend to the biggest threat. And so now I understood why I had that. And that, again, Samantha, if you think about it, evolutionary biology, that's survival. This is us.
Of course.
This is the system putting a mechanism in place for us to survive. So I was like,
it's fear and then habit change and then hopefully survival. So, I mean, and also our automatic thoughts are a culmination of everything that has been around us. And your parents are some of the people that you spend the most time with in the most formative years.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to me that people don't stop to ask themselves, is this thought really mine?
Yeah, right.
Sometimes, and some people believe that they are their thoughts. Like, this is me, the person thinking the thoughts. No, you are observing the thoughts, and the thought is likely a pattern that you heard too many times, and you have to distinguish whether or not you actually agree with it. So that is huge. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm so done with this inner critic because she was fierce, and it was stressing me out. And so I was like, all right, so let me get a beat on her. What does she look like and all things? And so I did kind of an inventory, and I was like, oh, she's a Supreme Court judge. She's got black robes. She judges everything. She's got her hair pulled up in a bun, a tight bun.
Really tight.
Flashy skin. She hasn't been up and out of the sun. She never smiles. Her clothes smell musty. It's like,
dang.
So that was the thing. And I was like, oh, that's intense. And I'm, well, how am I going to re-script her? So it's like, okay. So I took her and I gently, instead of sternly, I took her gently into a garden. So she was out in the sun. I put lovely flowing embroidered robes on her. So she's out in the sun. I gave her lavender to calm her down and chocolate to sweeten her up. And so I really had a different persona for her. And then I was like, well, what's her voice going to sound like? That was the last thing that I did in this exercise. And I was like, I want her to sound like a comedian. Now I'm gonna date myself when I tell you this, but I'm like, what comedian do I know that had a comment about everything? And the first one that came to mind was Joan Rivers, who passed away. She was hilarious, and she had a comment on everything. And so I made my inner critic have this. Her makeover was the voice of Joan Rivers, right? So I went from this rare, lioness, Supreme Court judging everything kind of thing to Joan Rivers cracking me up all the time, and that was an interesting.
Amused.
Now it took me a while to incorporate that into my actual life, but what resulted was more self-compassion, calmer, inner peace. And also I'd been on the mat. I was coming to the mat every day. So I was learning to trust myself. So it was kind of like a full package. It's
Yeah.
rescripting the inner critic was part of the whole package that Peter put together. I just added that piece. And also the ancestor clearing that John brought in. John Newton of Health Beyond Belief was a wellness practitioner who came into Peter's program to do the ancestral clearing part. And he teaches that.
Hmm.
I'm one of his practitioners. I've been in the work since 2014 and do it somewhere on the planet pretty much every day since
Wow.
2014. So
So,
it's a very important practice. Yeah.
yeah, so we know on the science side, epigenetically, we inherit things from our grandparents and the trauma that they went through. And there are genuine studies on that. But
Mhm.
there is also a perhaps more spiritual side to it. Is that what you're referencing in this? Like, could you explain a little bit about how that, like a session would go?
Oh, well, gosh, there's about 30 different ways that we could get at the burden. Ancestral clearing is interesting from a science point of view because I was like, how does this even work?
Yeah.
We're accessing the present moment. I think what I'll do is I'm going to just take you through a way, like um, a short example of what ancestral clearing is, so everybody can have an experience of it, and then I'll
Let's
explain what
do
you
it.
just did. So,
Cool.
ancestral clearing is actually a prayer practice where we're
Hmm.
asking source or whatever you call whatever created creation. We're going to call it source or creator. We're asking it to help us release that which no longer serves us.
Hmm.
And we're not asking it to take anything from us. We're asking it to help us release. Because if I could have, as an example, stuff around my mom, if I could have released that stuff by myself, I would have. It wasn't until I got into ancestral clearing that I was actually able to. And a lot of her
Hmm.
stuff was connected into like mother stuff in the lineage. So it was like, that was amazing. So we're asking source to really help us release that which no longer serves us. And we use the word very specifically, the word forgive, to mean that. We're asking, releasing that which no longer serves. And we do it with humility and gratitude, which is like, please and thank you. So I'm just going to do kind of like a short prayer, just so everybody kind of gets an idea of what the kind of the energy of it. And so everybody
Right.
listening, if you could just sit quietly for just a moment and breathe normally.
I'll close my
Uh,
eyes.
if it's safe to do so, yeah. Close your eyes and just let these words pass over you as you breathe normally. Creator, all that you are, for everyone here, and all of our relationships and all of our ancestors and all of their relationships through all space, time, dimension, realms, lifetimes, and incarnation. For all the hurts and wrongs ever done to us in thought, word, or deed. Any hurts and wrongs we did to others, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Please help us all forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For all war, battle, holocaust, genocide, persecution, slavery, injustice of any kind, any hurts and wrongs to the earth, the life of the earth, Native, Indigenous, and First Nation people. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves, anyone involved directly or indirectly. Forgive and release one another and forgive and release ourselves, please and thank you. For all the times any of us were abandoned, not nurtured, loved, or supported, or cherished in the ways that we needed. For the times we didn't feel safe or wanted in the womb. For all addiction, alcohol, drug abuse, mental illness, everything that arose, led up to, and arose from it. For all the times we were overwhelmed by life, by people or circumstances, and for the times things didn't make sense or reconcile. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For all that led to and arose from regret, resentment, disappointment, and letdown. For all hardship, struggle, adversity, displacement, and survivor's guilt, especially as children. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves. please, and thank you. And for all unresolved grief and loss, and the unshed tears of all the generations. Please help us all to forgive and release one another and forgive and release ourselves. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. And just take a nice big breath in and let it out. And just notice how that feels in the body.
Wow. It reminded me a lot of the feeling that I get when I do the Ho'oponopono prayer. Are you familiar?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But what I
Sure.
loved about that was how specific it was, because it really targeted certain feelings. And what I love about it too is that it's not just yours. It breeds that oneness that I think, especially in spiritual practices, we're all trying to obtain and maintain. That was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. So you notice an effect. And so as a
Yeah.
scientist, I'm like, what's happening here? Like, I know
Yeah.
this is working. What's happening here? And what I understood was, if you look at quantum physics tells us we can access the past, present, and future all at once through the present moment. And we just had a present moment experience. So we're actually leveraging that power, and we're leveraging our connection to the all that is and the creator of the all that is, and asking for help. I love this process because you don't even have to believe in a creator for it to work. All you need to do is want help, and it works. Because I work with people like that. You don't have to believe in gravity for it to act on you. It's like that. Right. Yeah. So we can address the past, present, and future through the present. And some traditions in the ancestral healing arts say that you can only clear 7 generations front and back. And I hear that as my angle, and I'm like, well, what's the limitation on the creator? If the creator's doing it, the limit.
Who said that?
Who said it was? It's kind of an old. It's kind of in the lexicon, but also science. It's what science can measure. So why would I want to limit the creator? Because creator's limitless, right? This creator's like infinite. So that's why when we, as a practitioner, really, and setting up the work, I'm sitting in the energy if we can clear the whole line back to the first mother or the first father or the, whatever. So that's the orientation, and that's why.
And in that capacity, you're helping everyone, not just yourself.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what's also interesting as a practitioner, where I'm kind of helping to focus the practice, creator's doing the work, right? The healing is happening between the client and the creator. But as the practitioner, I still feel the release, So it's kind of like Lynn McTaggart's work on the power of 8, even though this is a group of 3, like the practitioner, source, and client. She noticed that when you do the work, everyone gets healed, not just the person that's in the healing spot. Everyone. Yeah. So it's this theme again of how interconnected we are.
Yeah. Yeah, every time I help somebody, I heal a little bit more deeply too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love everything that we have discussed. Before we wrap up, I'd like to ask you, what would you want that version of yourself before you went on this journey to know?
Oh, because I learned it the hard way.
Yeah.
The greatest healer in my life, in everybody's life, lives within. Doctors can set a bone and stitch up a wound, but they can't tell the body how to heal. That healing power lives within me. And my orientation, just because of I was oriented to look to the external for my solutions. And so part of Peter's work, actually part of my own work, is wait a minute, I'm part of the all that is. I'm going to heal in the all that is, not just science, all that really pointing me back to here. But it took a freaking healing crisis for me to get that. So I would have liked to have known that the greatest healer in your life lives within you, and pain is part of healing. I learned that the hard way too. Nobody ever told me that. They just would they try and do everything they can to make it go away. They never just said, this is the process, babe. They never said that. They did everything they could to make it go away. So the context of that is where it will repeat. And that's again or error. Right?
That's huge. All of my biggest growth came in the depths of my biggest discomforts. So 100%. And at this point, I don't avoid it anymore. I don't avoid pain. I don't avoid discomfort. I see it as an opportunity to grow and heal. And if that's not a blessing, right?
Yeah.
So, and in that aspect, I don't regret anything, even the things that happened to me that I had no control over, because they made me who I am today and gave me the ability to help others heal the way only I can today. So, coming back to that gratitude, I'm so grateful that you were here today to share your journey. Is there anything you would like to add about services you offer or things you want the audience to know?
You can get a free download of the introduction and the first chapter of my book.
Oh, perfect.
And then there's 5 ways of relieving fear, stress, and anxiety. A toolkit for daily use, which has that rescripting exercise in it as a bonus. So you just grab me on my website. I'm all over social media, and you can contact me through my website and set up a free 15-minute just meet and greet kind of deal. And we'll see, just to see if I can be of any help to you. And Samantha, thank you so much for having me on today. It was great having this conversation. All the best to you in your dissertation. I'm so excited for you and for everyone who will benefit from that.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for being here today to share your wisdom and your experience with us. If something in this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to notice what shifted. Because change doesn't always begin with action. Sometimes it begins with a shift in perspective. This is Shine In and Out, where we explore biology, psychology, meaning, and consciousness, how they come together and influence each other. I'm Sammy Stoltz. I will see you next time, and keep shining.